Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, the man who puts the ding-dong in Ramalama Ding-Dong,
Tim Longo. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw out a little musical theater there for you.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
With each episode, you're trying to get me to break character, I think.
Yes, I am. I'm doing my best. I feel like I want to jump right in with the first and most awesome thing that I discovered over the weekend playing this game.
Yeah.
So back on the first or second episode, you mentioned how you got a chocobo.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Uh-huh.
What colors?
My chocobo is literally standing in the middle of the desert right now, and he's always on the map, because he's flashing yellow. I have a yellow one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So mine's, they always start as yellow, and then what I discovered is you can get them to then become blue, and scarlet, and purple, and then like a lighter color yellow through leveling them up.
Oh no!
So yeah, this is insane. This is just the trippiest thing. And I didn't find this the first time I played it. I just kind of went back because you had mentioned it, and I just written it down like, oh yeah, chocobos, I should check that out. And I've been playing Final Fantasy XIII, as I've mentioned a couple times. And Final Fantasy XIII, when you ride around in the world on on those things, they kind of look around as you get near certain areas, and there's treasures to dig up.
Oh, I thought in the overworld?
Yeah. The overworld and the dungeons are all kind of one thing in 13. But yes, there is kind of an open area. I mean, it all looks the same. It's not a distinct renderer and all that stuff like it was in the old games. But but there is an area that's kind of open, and you can kind of do whatever you want in the same way. It's much different from other Final Fantasy games. But be that as it may. So I went back to that forest. And I went in there and I got a chocobo and I talked to the Moogle. And if you talk to him a couple times, you can actually find out that you can go and play a little game of, warmer, colder.
Yeah, I did that. I did that once or twice.
Okay. So if you do it a few times, you might find a stone buried in the ground.
Uh-huh.
The stone has markings on it, and it's called a chocograph.
Oh, no.
Chocobos. And these are maps to treasures out in the world.
Oh, no.
So, and as you peck and dig more treasures up, and you can do that kind of as much as you want, you will end up finding more of these things and leveling up your chocobos like beak strength so that they're able to dig faster.
Oh, my gosh.
It is nuts, right? It is so... I mean, it's like a mini game that's a whole huge side quest because there's like maybe 30 of these things. And then occasionally, so you'll get a few of them. Like I went and did one, and like we had decided, little inside baseball here. We're recording this on Monday night, and originally we were going to record it on Sunday. And I was really happy to decide that we were going to record today instead because I wanted to put more hours into this, to this big side quest. So I discovered it on like Saturday, and I was like, oh man, I spent a couple hours on that. And then I just dug in. I just did as much as I could of finding these things. So what you'll do is you'll find a few, and then ultimately you'll dig up a chocograph that you can't find because you can't get to it. And you'll look on this little menu they have for the chocographs, which is like, here's the clue, like they're descriptive, like I think this is near the outer continent, or, it's by the southwest corner of the mist continent or whatever, little descriptive stuff with the picture, which is just a picture of the overworld somewhere, like from a particular perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you play that hot and cold game out on the overworld as well when you get near those locations. But then there's one you can't get to, and you go look in this menu and it says, well, you need to be able to cross planes as a terrain type, and also something else. And it just has like question mark, like you don't know what the type is that you need. So finally you'll open a chest out in the world, a treasure chest, that will blow this smoke up into your chocobo's face. Okay? And the chocobo will fall asleep. and you will go to the Chocobo Dream World.
Oh, no.
It is the craziest, trippiest thing I've seen. Like, I was not expecting this. Like, the Chocobo just kind of floats in space and turns, and then this planet comes into view, and there's a giant Chocobo and all these other different colored Chocobos, and you level up, basically. And then you can go back, and now you have water travel. But only like shallow water near the shoreline. So you can go down a beach and into the light blue water that's kind of...
Oh, I was wondering if that meant anything.
It does. It's not just a rendering thing. And you do that, and you find another place where which is like another Chocobo forest. It's called Chocobo Lagoon, and you have to kind of make your way through a maze of light blue water to kind of get to it. And you can do more of that hot or cold game there, and you can always go back to the other one. And once you've gotten a different color, you can find more there as well. And then this progresses again. You go Scarlet, which lets you just walk right over the mountains, like just straight up the side of the really steep mountains anywhere.
Wow.
And then you can get Purple, which lets you cross anywhere in the oceans. And then finally you can become Yellow, and that lets you fly.
Wow.
And once you can fly, of course, you can then find the Chocobo land that's in the clouds, naturally.
You're making this up.
I am not making this up. I am not even kidding you.
This is a lie.
And then the final thing you can find is Chocobo Paradise, which is where the big Chocobo lives with all his other Chocobo friends. But you don't have to leave your Chocobo there. You can go out and adventure further with your Chocobo. It is
wow.
It is something else. Yep. It is something else. It was quite an experience. And I spent probably 6 hours just playing this stupid Chocobo game. I also there's points you can get from playing the hot or cold game. And I guess if you get like a point or two for every potion or, status reliever that you dig up. And then if you find one of those chocographs, you get like 10 or 15. And if you find there's these 6 chocograph pieces that are pieces of a bigger chocograph that are in your menu, like your items, your inventory, that have a riddle for where to find the Chocobo Paradise. That's how I did figure that out. It's on an island that's like in the upper left corner of the map, I think. Is that right?
If you fly the airship over there, it won't be there, or can
it? No, you can find all these things. Like but
you can't land. Maybe
you cannot land. I don't think. No, I don't think you can land.
Because I've noticed you can't disembark from the airship in certain locations.
Right, you can't land on a forest, I don't think. You have to land basically on flat ground.
Yeah.
So I spent all this time going all over the world with the little footprints, and I spent, literally hours on this thing this past weekend.
Wow.
So it was pretty awesome.
That is super cool. God, it's crazy. There's a separate menu for it, and
yes, it's very similar to the existing menu, but it's basically to navigate the chocographs. It's like a full screen menu, just like the inventory screen or whatever. And when you're on the Chocobo, you can bring that up if you have chocographs. So basically, you call that up, and if you've found your first chocograph, you can look at that thing. When you hit triangle for the menu, it'll pull up a question like, do you want to do this instead? There's places where there's like cracked walls on the sides of mountains that you can break open. If you feed the Chocobo a special food, a dead pepper. What? There are bubbling pools in the ocean, like in the middle. There's one that's in the middle of nowhere, which was a pain in the ass to find. I'm going to tell you, a major pain in the ass. Explicit content warning. That was ridiculous. It's just like ocean. And it was on a very small, slightly different colored square just to the right of the long archipelago that's to the west of the southwest continent. That was brutal to find. And you can also find the ultimate weapon this way.
That's what I was going to ask you is what's the big payoff, or is there a big payoff?
Yeah, this one has the big payoff of doing that. I did have somebody write an email about another big long side quest that I didn't do. And I will dig that out when we get to reader mail. But, because it basically pays off with a bunch of equipment that has no bonuses, but is like leisure wear. It's like a T-shirt and some sandals. And it's just like, here's the stuff you go to the beach with. You also find that through the Chocobo quest, as it turns out. But, yeah, pretty wild. Pretty wild.
That is crazy. Well, and good for them part of the trick for us playing this way is that I do find myself, kind of, hell-bent on playing essentially critical paths. I don't stray too much, but I get the feeling like I was digging around in the menu where you have the keys, or the key sub-menu.
Key items.
Yeah, key items. And there's a few things in there that I'm not really sure. They feel like they're probably side quest related.
Right.
I don't know.
Like the Kupo nut.
The Kupo nut, and there's the maybe the 4 gems come into play later. But there's the 4 gems. And then
you picked those up on the pathway, the forest pathway.
I don't know. They're 4. I forget what they're called. They're 4 magical gems that have. One of them is actually I think her Dagger's necklace, and then there's 3 others, and it's like the legendary mythology of the 4 gems or something.
Right.
So maybe those are critical path. But then there's also the astrological. I guess they're trinkets of some kind, and you go to that bird lady in Treno, and then you can give them to her. And I've found a few, like 4 of those.
Yeah, you get a bunch of money for those. That's the Stellarius or Stellatio or something like that. Stellario. I can't remember exactly.
I don't even know. I have a hard time remembering when I find them or how I find them. They're
just in chests. They're kind of in those chests that you can't see on the main screen, and you kind of have to dig around for them.
So it's just
by kind of going around the edges. Yeah, they're very kind of. I didn't turn all of those in, but yeah, that's a side quest you could totally do.
But I'm wondering if you find all of them, which I assume that there's probably 12, right, or something for astrological signs.
Right.
I maybe get something from that too, but.
I also got my best piece of mage armor from doing that quest from doing that hot and cold game with the chocobos. If you build up to 10,000 points, 10,000 points, which takes, let me tell you, no small amount of time.
I would think so.
But if you build up to that, well, there's some ways to get bonus points. Like if you find 4 or more treasures while you're digging in that hot or cold game, then you get a time bonus and your points are doubled. So that's good. And if you find 8, the chocobo, the Moogle basically pays you off to not play anymore because you're doing too well. So you get a point bonus, which is just purely free. Here is a certain, and that seems to be based on like how much time you had left. So if you have a lot of time left, you get like this huge bonus. So I got up to 10,000 points with that stupid game because finding enough dead peppers to be able to feed the chocobo, to be able to go and find these places that were in the ocean in particular. Those took a long time to find. And I would go back and play that game and be like, okay, let me just get 40 or 50 of those dead peppers. And I would just keep racking up these points. And I finally looked at what you could trade them in for. And it's like a whole bunch of stuff that I already had. And then at the top, what was it called? The Robe of Lords or something like that. I think it was the Robe of Mage Lords or the Robe of Lords or something like that. And so I ended up doing all this crazy stuff. And what I love about this whole side quest is it's very different. And I'm going to pull us back to sort of Western RPGs and stuff like that. It's very different from a Western RPG in that you cannot find this and not know and not care. And I don't feel like that happens in RPGs, maybe just RPGs in general anymore, but certainly ever Western RPGs.
Yeah.
It's always like there's a note in your journal, and and it's a tick box that you've got to check, that you haven't, you're like, and it's there, and it eats at you.
Yeah.
It's why RPGs get to be so long, is that you end up spending all this time on side quests that you may not even care about really as a player. but you've got this fear of missing out, and you've got, whatever. And this whole thing you could just not do, and you wouldn't know. I didn't do it when I played this 15 years ago, and I had no idea. I was blown away to find something this large in this game. Unbelievable to me. Yeah,
I mean, it's crazy the way you're describing it. It's crazy just the resources that they would put into something like this as an elaborate side quest, regardless of finding it or not. Even finding it, the work that was put into it for such a specific thing. It's almost, not that this was the plan, but it's like it's something that you in that day and age you'd want a strategy guide for, because it's only the best way to know about this stuff.
Well, and I've had more than one person point out that the Final Fantasy IX strategy guide was the worst strategy guide of all time.
Yeah, I saw that there was a thread about that or something. Yeah, somebody had mentioned that.
Jason Schreier sent us a link to their article about, everything was moving online back then, so like every page they would have a hint and then like, go online.
Oh no, seriously, yeah.
Every single page. It's pretty funny. They have some pages and it's like, oh my God, how did nobody stop them? But anyway, I don't have the strategy guide. I just kind of
Yeah, no, I mean, you
to
figured it
scratch
out.
My OCD itch. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Well, I had made a note about the chocobos, and I was just like, yeah, I should go do that, and especially because I had seen in 13 that it was something, and I played 7 and 8, and there's chocobo stuff in those, and I know it's part of the series, and I don't often spend time on it, but I figured, I'll go back and look and see what I can see, and there you go.
Yeah, but 6 hours of content. I mean, to your point about Western RPGs, I agree with you for the most part. I think, not that I'm already a big Witcher defender. They are pretty hand-holding most of the time, especially for side quests. However, there are definitely times when I think they break some of the rules that, say, a BioWare would break, where they allow you to go in a direction with something that will be fruitless, and they don't mind that, and they did that more in the older games in 1 and 2, but in 3 they still have some of that stuff, which I definitely appreciate, because you can definitely miss a lot of stuff in Witcher 3, but they come at it from a different sensibility than because I guess the Eastern European side of their RPG making versus Western Europe and the United States types of RPGs.
Right, and Canada
or North America, yeah. That's so cool discovery. That's really cool. Yeah,
it's a wild, huge sidebar.
You had mentioned it over text offline, and I was like, I was wondering what he was talking about. I thought maybe it was the astrological signs or something else. So
yeah, those I found, and I found a bunch of them, but it didn't even actually occur to me to go back and sell them. I had sold a bunch of them and fought there's a creature you have to fight in that basement or something when you first go into that place. So I'd done that when I went to Treno the second time for the tournament, the Tetra Master tournament. But I didn't. I just forgot, honestly, to go and turn those things in. I'm sure that actually turns out to be some pretty good stuff too. But
finding all of those things, man. I mean, I'm fine. I definitely open every chest I can see. I'm pretty much scouring, but I'm assuming there's a bunch of stuff that's not on Critical Path dungeons that you'd have to find to actually get all of those. So that's probably a crazy time commitment.
I think they're probably all. I mean, there aren't any. There's only one location. Well, I guess there's 3 locations I was able to find that are, whole real locations. So the Chocobo Paradise, which is basically a water park for chocobos. It's pretty awesome. That's where if I was a chocobo, if I come back as a chocobo, that's where I want to go.
Yeah.
And MoogleNet headquarters. Very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, there's a town high up on a mountain. I flew all over the place in the Hildegard, I guess. There's this place called Daguerro, I think, that's on an island in the southwest, I think. It's up on a mountain. And then there's Quan's cave or whatever, which is where
Is that where Vivi's from?
Where Vivi is from. Yeah, you can get to that once you can get to that with the airship.
Yeah.
Or you can get there by walking up there with a chocobo, which is what I did because I was walking all over the place. I was like, oh, hey, what's this? And I walked in, and sure enough, there's some stuff there. And in fact, there is a place to get one of the underwater treasures in there. That was incredible. So this was a huge thing that kind of took me all over.
That's pretty sweet. Yeah. Good for them.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for that too. It kind of pays off a little more on their overworld, which otherwise is kind of frustrating. You know, the whole time you're on a chocobo, so you're not having any random battles, and it's not frustrating from that standpoint. And it lets you basically pay off on something that you might not otherwise be enjoying. As a player. So it was good stuff. I was very happy. I was brimming with excitement to blow your mind with my purple chocobo.
To devote that much time to it, too. I mean, it must have been engaging enough to do so. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, it scratched my OCD itch too. I was really just like, oh my god. I was in there mashing those buttons in those 3 locations to find more stuff.
If it wasn't for the hour commitment you're mentioning, I might even I'd consider dabbling in trying it out. But 6 hours seems like
it was a lot.
It's a big chunk to add on to that.
Yeah, it was a big chunk. But yeah, it totally scratched an itch for me. All right, let's get back to the main path, main quest. So let's see, where did we leave off last time?
We were in the middle of curing Sid, getting the potions from the different places in Lindblom. I believe, yeah.
Yeah, right. So that kind of goes a different direction than you expect. You were all excited to cure Sid.
Oh, well, what do you mean? We did cure Sid.
We turned him into a frog.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That is such a good moment.
Yeah, that was good. And then Quina, obviously, right?
It's like, oh my god, a talking frog.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That's a pretty great moment.
Yeah, that is really nice. And then they stretch out the whole Sid thing nicely too. Eventually, when you eventually get him cured by other means, but. So that was cool. Just kind of returning to the city and as things are kind of under construction again, and they're kind of reintroducing you to that stuff. And it's they do a pretty good job at seeing. I haven't gone back. I want to kind of spend some time maybe and visit some of the older locations you go to of some of the towns that have been destroyed and stuff to see if they do anything with them. But it's nice to see the cities in different states, and they do a pretty good job throughout the game of having you return to places multiple times and having the state changes there, especially in that day and age, having that much of a with the pre-rendered backgrounds and stuff. They had an advantage to be able to do that, so it's kind of nice. Yeah.
And as developers, it's nice to not have to invent lots of new places. Places that are in flux are great because now you can revisit them and you don't have to build as much new stuff. You have obviously you have to build some stuff, but it's not a 5th or 6th or 7th or whatever continent that they would have in this game, which would start to get a little tedious and feel very repetitive, even if it weren't.
Yeah.
It would start to feel like, oh, okay, how big is this place? This is more like, oh, here's the world is itself kind of changing, and that's pretty great.
Well, we talked. I mean, just as a quick example. When we were kicking off the Tomb Raider reboot, we were talking about that with the island. And one of the goals that we talked a lot about was just the sense of, hey, you want to get to know this place, right? And it saves on, you could say it saves on resources, and revisiting stuff definitely is more efficient. But also, there's more meaning when I go back to Lindblom after the destruction or what have you, or Alexandria, because I've been here multiple times and I'm more engaged with it. And I think it has meaning for the characters too. Yeah. Right. So, I mean, obviously it's an important thing for Sid, and, going back to Alexandria is really important to Dagger. There's all these places are things that are really interesting from that standpoint, so it has great story value as well, and therefore player value, right? It really makes the player feel grounded in a real place,
and feel like these concerns are real as well. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. And it doesn't feel like, oh, we're just introducing some new thing. It's more like the places become characters as well, as like I sort of said previously.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're really good. Really good. So I guess what happens after this, we go to the Desert Palace, and we're going to try to confront Kuja. How did we get there? We got captured, basically, right? Didn't he whoop us?
Yeah, I mean, so you get the boat, which I made a note to make sure we mention, you get that boat where you can go on the sea, right. Which was cool. And I also got to hand it to him as far as like every time they escalate the overworld travel multiple times. Obviously, we'll talk about getting to the airship phase later on too. And it was just cool to be in that boat and just, super fast and going all over the ocean, and eventually you get to that desert palace. And just, they kind of start introducing this older civilization and kind of like there's some connection there that I forget, like, I think you meet Garland at some point early on, and there's some hints or you get some hints that Zidane or Zidane, however you pronounce his name, is connected to some of that stuff. I remember I have a note down here about some of those early connection points that obviously pay off when we'll talk about later on when you finally get there. But yeah, he captures everybody. And then, I don't know what that was. I heard something.
That was my email. Sorry about that. I thought I had already put on Do Not Disturb, but apparently I did not. I usually remember to do that. So you end up captured basically, and because he's got all your friends or all of Zidane's friends, he's going to make you go off on a quest for him because he can't himself step in. He's got too much magic.
Oh,
power,
that's right.
Basically.
There's the magic barrier on
right.
that stuff, right?
Yeah, right. And it takes you to Oil Vert, I guess, the green eye, I guess would be what that is. And that's kind of a MacGuffin for going in and just getting some stuff. I do kind of love getting this MacGuffin that he needs that we never really see again, I guess. We don't see how he uses it, but he does. He just kind of takes it from you later on. I guess what I loved at this point was this sort of moral question that the black mages were wrestling with.
Yeah.
Which is basically, is it okay just to obey, because he's holding something over us, they know what they're doing is wrong. But isn't that better than being dead, basically,
right.
or stopping,
right.
I guess is the way they put it, which is pretty dark and heady stuff for an RPG.
Yeah. I mean, I think they return to the Black Mage stuff time and time again, even later on when they find out that he isn't going to extend their life, and they have regrets about their decision and stuff, and just keeps returning to that kind of identity and lifespan kind of theme, which I think is cool. And Vivi obviously is still a foil for that. It seems like each act, if you will, or disc or however they split it up, has a character focus. And so, you have kind of, there's the Black Mage and Vivi stuff early on. I'm probably getting these out of order. And then you have the dagger stuff, in the middle, and then we're kind of culminating to all the Zidane stuff. It seems like kind of that's coming.
There's a whole bunch of stuff for Bermesia that.
That was early on, right? Yeah, with Freya and stuff.
Yeah. Each character is kind of the only one I would say who doesn't really have that degree of that. Well, there's I guess two. The Amaranth, Flaming Amaranth, doesn't really have his own. Kind of real moral center story point, and neither does Quina really, as far as I'm concerned. Right? There's a couple things that you can get with Quina.
Not much, and I'm wondering if there's something out there that might be secondary. That if you find it, because that swamp is on each continent. I think there's one of those swamps, so I kind of had in the back of my head that I was going to go and try to visit those to see if there are any differences and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't do that. Although I did take Quina and Vivi into Quan's cave or whatever dwelling on top of that mountain, and there were some good cutscenes there.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, and because Vivi lived there, and his master, his father, grandfather, whatever, kind of comes back and talks to him as a ghost.
Oh, wow.
And then, and Quina's there as well. And then Quina's master, Q, also comes and just shows up. It's bizarre. There's a weird scene where Quina hallucinates all this food, and is like, trying to eat everything in sight. And it's this huge pile of food. It's a really weird, kind of trippy scene, as most of Quina's stuff is, to be honest.
See, every time you say, like, it's just everything you just said there is like you're making it up. It's so absurd. This game is so crazy. And it's so like one-offy, like it's just, I guess I still get stuck on that whole concept. We've talked about it pretty much every episode, but that whole concept that these one-offs are all over the place. And I put down some notes for, various ones that we've seen, throughout this session, but it just still boggles my mind. And kind of as a minor segue, I had not necessarily another big question like we've been trying to do, but I had a question for you that's maybe more minor to throw out there.
Okay, sure, go.
And it's specifically about this one because I'm new to the franchise essentially, and I'm still contemplating how many more of these I will play. I think I'll probably need to take a long break after this one, but I think I will return to them. But when it comes to Final Fantasy games, because you've played them all or almost all of them, what is it about this one, or is there anything about this one that is different from the others, or does it stand out at all? Or the kind of all of the weird revelations and hurdles that I'm getting over, are those, pervasive throughout every one of them? And I'm just, and the things I'm experiencing are not just a 9 specific thing.
Well, I would say that. I have to say I started basically with the PS1 era ones, and this was my first. But I've only played. I guess I've played one sort of prehistoric Final Fantasy one. A lot of the email we've gotten from big fans have centered on 4, 5, and 6 as kind of having a similar tone and feel. And like I've said previously, I feel like 7 and 8. While I would say they have the same sort of a lot of one-off stuff, and have a very similar kind of structure in a lot of ways, party style, all these sort of, things that are built into this game are very familiar in 7, 8, and 9. They all feel of a piece. It's just the tone of this one that really is so different. Even though it's dealing with this sort of dark stuff, it still has a very light and playful tone as to how it goes about it. And I think that's there a little bit in 10-2. It's there a little bit. Yeah, that one's kind of different because it's a follow-on to the main story of 10, which kind of ends on a down note. But it frees up this woman who had been sacrificing so much of herself to save the world, basically, that now she can go off and kind of let her hair down and have fun. It's a really kind of girl power kind of story. Which was really kind of fun to play, to be honest, because it's also not so, doom and gloom.
Yeah,
it is different in that this is a world, and somebody mentioned this in email, and I think I have that to read later. But this is it's a world that was kind of in progress, and you're kind of there as it starts to fall apart, and so. It also has that, like in 7 and 8, it feels like the world has already kind of gone to hell. To a certain degree, certainly in 7, more so than anything else. Like it's at the tipping point of like, oh yeah. And this is more like, yeah, life's pretty good for everybody. Sure, there's probably people who, for whom life isn't great, but for the most part, civilization is stable. And it kind of falls apart. That was a great observation. I'm going to dig out that email.
That's an interesting point. And then one of the reasons I'm asking the question too is a little selfish in that I kind of worry that one of the things I like about this game so far is the tone and the kind of zaniness, like the description of the scene that you just mentioned with Quina eating the food. Like I half want to go see that just to see it, because that kind of stuff I love so far. and it's because it's so wacky. And I fear that if I were to go back and play, or, they're remaking 7 now, etc. And 15 seems to be not this, tonally seems to be more of, going into the serious direction or something. At least visually, I worry that I won't have this feeling with the rest of them, and won't enjoy them as much.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you could really enjoy. I think 12 is a fantastic game. That's a PS2 title. It has a lot. In common with 9. I haven't played that in some time, but it's a really good game. Anyway, the person who had sent email to that extent was Billy Connell, so I wanted to shout that out at him, because that was not entirely my observation. That was definitely his.
Yeah, that's neat. That's really insightful. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I had a friend at work, Gabe, who also mentioned that I guess in 6 maybe there's actually a full opera section where they actually perform an opera somehow.
That's awesome.
And he was kind of mentioning that, because we had talked about theater related and stage related stuff. So he said that he thinks it's a Sakaguchi theme that comes up a fair number of times throughout, even in the early days. So
yeah, it definitely makes me, I have heard a lot that 4, 5, and 6 are probably most similar to 9, or vice versa. And it makes me like, oh, do I really want to dig back and play 4, 5, 6? Like,
because those are 16-bit. Is that where they?
That's right. Yeah. So
and
it's
are 1, 2, and 3 8-bit, or what era?
I think they must be, although I don't know. I mean, I played one of them on the TV Night. I played it one. Played one of them on the DS. There was I think it was Final Fantasy 1 and 2 were on a DS cart, and I played one of those. And a lot of the story stuff didn't really come through. It was sort of like playing the early Ultimas.
Yeah. But, what a crazy series this is. I mean, it's so weird to come to it this late and always hearing about it from a third person perspective, but such a weird thing.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk more story stuff.
Yep.
Welcome back from the break. We're going to climb through the sand and go up into the Desert Palace, where all kinds of crazy stuff happens, and Tim almost loses his mind with frustration.
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of have a macro point with the Desert Palace, because I got stuck on one of the candle puzzles that Brett ended up giving me some hints via text on, and there's not, I mean, on the specific puzzle, there's not much to necessarily talk about there that's that important. It just kind of reinforces and drives home the point of, okay, every time they come upon a new location, they're going to come up with some new mechanics or some new puzzles that are related specifically to only that location, which is cool. And we've talked about throughout all the episodes. We've had some examples of that every episode where that's a neat thing. It's like, okay, that's a cool thing that development didn't usually do, even back then, and good for them. However, one of the disadvantages to that can be when, each and every new thing that you do, even if it's a small one-off thing, there could potentially be new, essentially, I will summarize it by calling them usability challenges. There could be a new thing that this new puzzle brings in, and adventure games suffer from this. Point and click adventure games suffer from this all the time.
Yeah, it's all they are. Yeah,
yeah. Every room is that. But when you've gotten to this point where it's like, okay, they've introduced this new thing to you, and there's these new rules because it's a one-off, and awesome. Okay, great. It's custom. Good for you guys. However, if it's frustrating and opaque, and I miss a text line from some speech that somebody had, or I just didn't quite get the clue, or in some cases, even the level layout of the the pre-rendered 3D background, sometimes I even have a hard time finding the door or the place where I'm supposed to go, because it's just not.
Yeah, and it's hard to make them. it's hard to make a mental model of that space.
There's no maps. There's no sense. And by the way, every time you enter a new room, the camera perspective changes.
Right. Exactly.
And so I will come. I'll come in, and it's awesome on one hand because it's super dynamic and always dramatic, right? Like their camera angles they choose are always pretty cool. But you come in one room and the camera's top down looking bird's eye view. You come into the next room, it switches around, and you come back to that same view that was top down, and now you're looking directly at the person's face or something. And it's completely switched around. So sometimes I'm actually trying to piece together where I need to go based on these the fixed cameras. And so with this one puzzle in the candle section toward the end that Brett was helping with, there's the one with the shadows of the devil and the statue of the devil and the angel, and you had to get the right combination. And then ironically,
and I just brute forced that one. I did not get the clue either. And I fiddled with the candles on both sides. And then finally I said, okay, well, I've tried all these combinations. How many are there? Okay, there's 16 and I've done 8. Yeah. Let me just do the remaining 8 figure out what is doing. I had no idea.
Well, I made the mistake of, it should have dawned on me, but I made the mistake of the initial clue that they tell you, I think, when you start this section is that, it's something about turning on the light and the path will be revealed, or lighting the lantern and the power. So I actually thought that the goal of this whole section was to light everything.
Right.
Rather than every room actually has its own rules.
Well, and the black mages basically say, just light everything,
Yeah, right.
You basically just have to light everything,
Okay, you're right. So that was an additional clue. So I got to that room and I just lit all of them thinking, okay, I'm done with this room. And then I just moved on, but then that ended up being a dead end. And then ironically, the path that is revealed once you do it isn't even there anyway. So there was no visual clue that I needed to stay in that room because the path was actually light. Right. It just appears in the middle of the room.
Right,
so
exactly.
While in other rooms, you can kind of piece together, okay, I haven't been to that door yet. I haven't been to this platform yet. But in the case of that room, there was no clue about where I needed to go because it didn't exist.
It is not a great puzzle. I mean, the only clue you kind of have is that you can turn the candles on and off. That's the only real clue.
Yeah. Well, and you can in the previous room too, where you have the bookcases.
Right, when you
sliding.
Put the bookcases. Yep.
So, and I didn't want to necessarily get stuck on that particular puzzle because it's like the shadow thing was cool, but it was more I just wanted to make that point of there's a double-edged sword with having so many custom experiences. Is that you need to make sure every custom experience that you make is going to be player friendly as much as player well motivated, fair, right? Fair and well messaged. Yeah. And again, that's the bread and butter of the point and click adventure game. And
it can't all be a monkey wrench or a chicken with a pull in the middle.
Right. So we get through the desert palace, and then and so you get essentially that MacGuffin you were talking about there.
Right. And you bring it back, and he steals it, and he steals Eiko or Iko, whatever. However you want to pronounce her name, so that you go to the next place, I guess. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Let's see.
Is that right, or do you go? God, geez, I can't remember now. You basically race to go off somewhere else. And you fight those jesters.
Yeah, that was a crazy battle.
Right.
Well, but before that, though, or wait, is it before or after that? Mog sacrifices himself for Eiko.
That's in that right at that battle.
Right at that section, which I thought was an awesome moment.
It's a great moment where it's like, oh, I'm actually an Eidolon and I wanted to be with you.
Super cool.
It's so touching. It really is. It's a great, great moment.
It was a nice little switcheroo on you, as well. Yeah. So that was cool. And then so you finally kill those darn jesters. Just happy to have them essentially dead. Well, I assume they're dead now. And then they form into that crazy beast, which was pretty grotesque.
Right. But that's a pretty common thing, actually. Just to make a side point in Final Fantasy games, to have these creatures that are melds of two other things. Like I just finished 13. Over the last week or something, at least the story part, and there is a moment where you fight. It's at the very end. There's this boss that's just like half of it is this kind of tiny thing, and the other half is this large grotesque thing. It's very weird. Yeah, it's sort of like Total Recall, with the guy with the second head in his belly. It's totally creepy, and you see that actually in several Final Fantasy games, as far as I can recall. It's like a character design thing. I think they come back to now and again. It's so corrupted,
Yeah.
That it's really disgusting.
With those particular jesters, I mean, they're terrible people, and so to have their form after their death and kind of have them combine into this grotesque creature, I thought was appropriate, symbolically appropriate. I don't know if that was the plan, but yeah, it was a fun fight. I think I breezed through it fine.
So you might even say that that little section there is kind of the end of Eiko's kind of story, in the sense that Mog, because we've picked her up at Medainsari, and she became part of the gang, and she is interested but you kind of have that storyline that kind of culminates there. And
that's a good point.
I do really appreciate that, because we're about to do, at the same time, we're doing Sid's, is basically going on now. And so each of these characters is getting their kind of moment in the sun, whether they're in the party or not. So, you've got Sid now, and he got to be cool. How'd you like that mini game where he had to not move?
Oh my God, I forgot. Yeah, I did have that note up here. I could not believe it.
That was pretty funny. I failed several times. I mean, you're trying to do it quickly because you've got a ticking clock, right? And you're just like, oh my God, and this monster keeps turning around. Oh yeah, it's a great one-off moment, and it's so silly, right? And he's a frog, and he's making all these crazy poses. It's such a great, stupid idea for a little puzzle of we'll just play the animation this much every time you press the button.
Yeah. Again,
so good.
Another one of those little moments, these custom moments. Yeah. And then right after that, you have the weight scale puzzle where you have to put the right weights on it and then bounce him up, which is it was a funny puzzle because the answer seemed pretty obvious. Like sometimes I feel like they go out of their way to give you these options for different ways to do things, but it actually isn't.
Yeah, but it's sort of like what. And this is a total different area, but it's like Ernst Lubitsch, what he said about film was like, you want to make the audience feel good about adding 2 and 2 and making 4.
Yeah, I guess so.
The director, Ernst Lubitsch, it is kind of silly and stupid. You can look at them and say, oh, there's these 4 things, and there's these 3 that are heavier, basically, because one's wood and one's iron and one's clay, so you can actually look at them. You could probably try all 3 options or something and get to it pretty quickly too, but it is pretty light.
Well, I actually intentionally, I figured I knew the answer right off the bat, and we don't have to rat hole on this, but I intentionally didn't. I chose a different combination just to see what would happen. Yeah. I obviously ended up on the right one, but it gives you a cool little moment and fail there. But anyway, it's kind of a funny little thing.
Yeah. So then we meet Hilda.
Yeah. Which was
Hilda, who doesn't remember marrying a toad.
Yeah, well,
her lines are so good.
She's it's another cool character intro because you've heard about her throughout, exactly, here and there throughout the game. There's ships named after her, and stuff, and so
and she turned him into an oglop.
Yes, right. Oh, and then there's the whole adultery, exchange there, which was like, wow, yeah, I forgot all about all of that.
This is Sid's deep stuff. Yeah,
I think she even calls him a skirt chaser or something like that.
She says she's talking about Kuja, who kind of just would tell her all of his plans because he's got her captured and who cares. And she says he was a hopeless narcissist, but at least he wasn't a skirt chaser like you.
Right. This great little lines that it's like, and I got to hand it to the localization, of the game too, because I feel like it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good.
They got in their own because I don't know what, obviously I would never know what the direct translation is for that, but
right. I'm sure idiomatic. Yeah, I'm sure there's a different idiom going on there. That was really perfect.
They were able to get their own, Western humor into some of this stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, and capture that. Yeah, that was really great. It's always funny to me, and this is true of all the Final Fantasy games that I've played anyway, that with the exception, I guess, of 13, but that Sid is always like this expert mechanic.
Oh, interesting.
He's often a ruler at the same time.
Huh.
And it's always kind of funny. It's like, I guess it's just narrative compression, right? I mean, you would have to have two characters do this role otherwise. So now we just have this one. And since it's been the same one for so long, why not, right? I mean, it's just, It is really interesting to me that he's this expert mechanic. And they make that a big part of it in this one by making him unable to do the work because he has the brain of a bug and then the brain of a frog.
Right.
I love that whole bit.
Well, if you're a fan, I mean, that I would think that the whole Sid storyline is really resonates well with fans who know who he is and kind of love that play. On the norm. Is he always an NPC in all the games, or do you ever get to play as him in your party?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I can't remember off the top of my head ever playing him.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean I haven't. Yeah, I just don't remember.
A couple. One line that I wrote a note down after the Hilda stuff, and so you talk to her, you eventually bring her back, and then they have that conversation in the throne room, et cetera, and then she essentially, the frog prince happens and she cures him. And then later, right after that, I think Zidane comes in and Sid's fully formed now in his human form. And he has this line where he just comes in and yells, "Who's that guy?"
Yeah.
And it's just,
who the hell's that?
It was so, I don't know, it's just disrespectful. And there is I don't know if I can call it a fatal flaw, but one of the flaws for the game for me so far has been I just don't like Zidane. I called him Bieber up front, I think in episode 1, and I just have a hard time relating to him because he's so snarky and so just disrespectful and just, he's the kind of kid / guy that I just hate. And that line, I wrote it down because it was like, yep, that's what I would expect him to say there. like totally oblivious to everyone else around him, totally self-centered, and and kind of he's just a little too far. So as we get into the rest of the story stuff, that we both ended on in a second, it's interesting how I'm taking that section once we get to Terra.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so I guess we pretty much, I mean, there's a little sidebar where you go to Alexandria that's mostly cutscene, because Dagger's gone there.
Dagger cuts her hair, which is a cool
little scene, and she changes, like her portrait changes and everything for a while.
Yeah, good for them. That was a nice little moment.
And then what happens next? I feel like we go right after Kuja at that point.
Yeah, pretty much. You go to where's the map where you get the mirrors? Is that you go to the Shimmering Isle? Right?
First you go to Ibsen's castle.
Which
has the upside down castles. Yep. It's in there, and you get those 4. And I don't want to dwell on that because that's that's maybe the only place where Amarant really has an arc at all, where they kind of compete. Yeah. But he goes in and he gets those 4 mirrors, and then you got to go do these 4 temples, which at the time I was thinking like. I was worried about you because I was thinking, oh man,
my God,
Tim's going to get to this point and think, holy crap, this is going to be like Zelda, these 4 involved dungeons
totally
with all these puzzles, and they're like earth, air, fire, and water. So it's like totally a Zelda thing. I was like, yeah.
Not only that, but you had said something to me, whether it was on air or off air, I forget, where you were talking about some battles that would be coming up that were heavily elemental based. And I was going to really need to think about my gear. And so I was like, okay, this is it. This is what Brett was talking about. I'm going to have to figure all this out. So obviously they split up the party, which was kind of interesting. The 2x2x2, and they chose different ones to go together. And in some cases, I think to intentionally cause some conflicts, which were cool, like Dagger and Eco going together. Then there was a cool little line where Dagger says girl talk, which I thought was cute. But anyway, so that all started. I reloaded to save because I realized what I thought was about to happen. And so what I did was I went in and maximized all 8 of their gear against the elements that they were going to go into the temple to fight. Because it's like, okay, I got to figure this out. So I took everyone's gear off. I found all the bonuses and for each of the types of gear, and I outfitted everybody. And then started that whole process over, and then went in. Eventually, you end up just fighting in the earth, in the earthquake one with Zidane and Quina.
The Earth Temple, right?
Earth Temple, yeah. But oh man, I'm very happy that I did not have to go through that. But then I was pissed because I thought they were giving me all the signs. Okay, step back one moment. The other thing that bugs me, which I'm sure that they get better at throughout the future of the series, is I never have warning about what's coming. So in a case like this, and also the battles are random, so I don't know who I'm going to fight. So there's often times when I have gear in my bag that would work really well for what I'm doing, but I didn't know it was coming, so I didn't know to outfit. And the only option then is to reload a save, and that's just a bummer, So
yeah, no, I agree, and that's definitely true, especially like when you go to the Northwest continent, which is the very icy one, and there's like a mist thing, and that spits out mist, and I don't even remember what it does to you, but it's like, oh, I have stuff for that, and you can go and re-equip it. And yeah, I mean, it is frustrating. Like, you have to get through that once to be able to be okay, to move forward. It's annoying.
Yeah, just kind of the discovery of that stuff. I wish that there was actually, I mean, maybe it'd be too overpowered to have an outfitting phase whenever you go into a new dungeon or something. And I don't know how exactly they would do it, but I think that's a bummer, because I actually I do like the gear system, and I do like, I think I mentioned this on a previous episode, but gear matters more than I feel like it matters in other RPGs, and I do like that. I just wish that the game wasn't fighting me all the time with actually using it at the right times. I mean,
you end up. I mean, I feel like it would be very cumbersome to do much else with that. It's unfortunate, because you do feel like you kind of have to know what's coming up to make good choices. I really just focus on ability, like, okay, I want to get these abilities, and then making sure that I equip abilities. And, after a while, I start focusing more on, okay, I'm getting towards the end of the game, and at this point, what really matters is what's going to get me through the bosses, because that's what's coming. So I end up putting on some really powerful stuff and dropping off things that probably are not having huge benefit at this point, like the bird killer, stone killer, man killer, devil killer, all those sorts of things. I need those points to go to counter, and having 20% more hit points, and auto life, which lets you die once in battle and come back with, I think, 1 hit point or whatever. So it's like I switch away from all the kind of little niggly stuff that helped me a lot in the early game, and I focus a lot more on these kind of heavy hitter, like 8 and 10 point abilities, because now those are the things that are going to get me through the more grueling battles to come. No,
I get it. I think, but my point still, I think, applies to the abilities as well, because you can't change those mid combat. Right. You have to preload those. So
you have to know.
And as a small example, that I won't go into too much detail, but you had mentioned for that Earth Temple battle with that one skeleton guy, to use the auto lift or auto float.
Auto float, yeah.
So yeah, that was a good tip. The irony, though, is that my approach to that battle up to this point was actually, I put on armor that absorbs earth damage and gives me health.
Oh, well, that'll work.
And so, but if you have that on and auto float, then you don't take any damage from the earthquake.
Oh, right. So you don't get any health.
You don't get any health. So I actually turned auto float off of Zidane and kept it on Quina. So he was getting healed from the earthquakes, and she was, free and clear. So anyway, a combo there. But it's funny how you can pit those things. You can pit those things against.
Right. That's
each
true.
other,
That's true. I've forgotten. I mostly just try to avoid the damage. But yeah, having something that heals you is good too. I kind of forgot that there were things that did that.
Well, I had happened into that because Quina actually had something on that absorbed damage accidentally. I didn't know she had it on, and every time the earthquake happened, she was getting health. And I was like, what is going on there? And then because I didn't actually know what absorb meant. I figured it was negating it, not actually giving you health back. So that was kind of an eye opener for me. But anyway, we get through that stuff, which is essentially opens up the Shimmering Isle, right?
Right. And then you can transfer into Terra.
Yeah. And then all the Terra and Gaia stuff. And so then we get into their crazy world.
I have to say, I'm just not a huge fan. Like, this 2-world thing is a very common Final Fantasy thing. Like, it's in 13. There's literally 2 planets. They're not in separate dimensions or anything like that. You know, it's not uncommon as a theme or as a setting, spicy thing. But it just, like, I don't care. Like, through that stuff, I'm like, okay, whatever. This is like, that's at the point where it ceases to be at a kind of human level for me. You know, like a human level of motivation. And like, this is now this weird fantasy thing that's just like too far. It's a bridge too far for me to cross, you know?
Yeah, it's one of those weird, like, I actually not, it's just a top of mind example. I don't think it's the best example, but I think Starcraft runs into this sometimes with their fiction, and that the Protoss stuff and like all of the high level metaphysical stuff. And truthfully, even we have some challenges with Halo sometimes in the same regard, ironically, where it's just like, you know, this high science fiction, you could call it, with Terra and like the what do they call them? The genomes,
right,
you know,
the genomes.
And even the
vessels.
aesthetic of Terra is just that kind of very unrelatable, maybe, like you're saying, unrelatable science fiction-y kind of side of things. And it's very different from anything else the game has had, which is probably their point. Although I will say that there are similarities to the inside of the tree. So at least for them, good on them for having some kind of like consistent art direction with those. Cause that actually,
that's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Cause it's a story point, actually.
Yeah, and Garland actually specifically mentions, right, because he describes what the tree was doing and why it was there and how he was utilizing it, which was cool. And I remember some of the mental notes of some of the visual art direction and the art design for the inside of the tree, and then there's some correlation there.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I didn't pick up on that, but I totally see what you're talking about. Absolutely.
They had that weird harp stuff, you know, where there's like these really, really ornate harp,
and also just
shapes.
Kind of the way the levels even connect.
Yeah.
As you get into Pandemonium, there's like that section with the elevator. I don't know if you get that far, but I
don't remember an elevator. Jumping.
Okay, yeah, so that might be right ahead of you of where you stopped. So, but it's the same sort of thing. It feels very much like the inside of the tree, although I didn't connect that up until you said that. So for sure,
it's just very abstract, and so you know, kind of. I understand if you're getting toward the end of the game, people, you know, we all make the same mistake where you want that, you know, you want things to get crazier and crazier over time, but it can kind of bite you as well if you go too far.
There are things, and I'm not going to get into them about Kuja that happened here because you haven't got to them yet, that actually reground it for me in a way. And I'm curious next time when we finish the game what you think of that. You know, because I find Garland, and, you know, honestly, I think the character is meant to be this way, but I find him so different and alienating that I just don't even care. Like, this soul pumping, returning souls this way or that way, and the vessels, and like, it just becomes so airy for me.
Yeah.
That I just like, and it's the only key in for me is Zidane, who I start to feel for here of like, oh, holy crap, you know, he's a made thing too, just like Vivi is.
Yeah, that's true. That is a cool, and I did write a note down because we've talked about it before of the theme of free will, and as it turns out, because he's been kind of consoling Vivi this whole time, and kind of that theme keeps coming back, right? And he had no idea this whole time that he was also like Vivi, this sort of unique diamond in a rough version of other automatons or vessels. Right. So but to your point about Garland, I mean, they didn't do a good job and didn't have enough time to introduce him. You know, like all of a sudden we're thrust into this world. We've seen him a few times, but we don't really know what he's all about. And then all of a sudden it's the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
And we've had no introduction to him.
Right.
And
he only briefly shows up on the bridge of that ship.
Yeah, just really briefly. But I mean, essentially it'd be like, think of watching Star Wars episode 4, 5, and 6, and then finally seeing Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi for the first time.
Right.
It wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have made any sense at all. Yeah, for sure.
And so, and then, as I mentioned before, compounding this for me personally is I don't like Zidane that much. So I don't care, I'm not feeling for him as much as I think they want me to, as well as not caring about Garland. And I could really give, two bleeps about Kuja because he's such a big jerk. But maybe, like you said, there's more coming up. I know that they've talked about, like, he's kind of I've gotten to the point where Garland has described him as kind of a failed / kind of washed up genome and all this stuff, and how he resents Zidane because he's had success on Gaia and all that stuff. But so there's more coming there, I assume.
Yep, for sure.
A couple of small notes I wanted to mention. There was a dream sequence when Zidane gets knocked out and they have that kind of black screen and they have the characters fade on screen with these quotes and stuff, which I thought was pretty neat. And then, let's see, souls and identity as a theme keeps coming up. And then just I do kind of like, though I wish that it wasn't dropped on us so quickly like this. Again, Garland's whole thing where he's taking a planet essentially and allowing his planet to survive by taking over the vessels, the people and the planet of this other planet to essentially, assimilate it, kind of Borg style or Galactus style.
And he sort of looks Borgy.
Yeah. So it's I do like that part of this whole theme where, he thinks he's doing the right thing for his planet. But he's doing it, he's coming about it in the completely wrong kind of way. And then finally, I ended with, and then there's just this sort of meet your maker theme, which is always cool, but again, just snuck up on us too much. Yeah. And then I ended in a cool sequence, where Zidane is injured and he's going kind of through this gauntlet of, I guess, bosses or mini bosses, and each of his party members kind of 2 by 2, either he catches up with them or they kind of catch up with him, and they're kind of helping him and kind of, following him along this path. And I ended up wiping on one of the battles, so I'll have to get back to it. But it was kind of a nice, party moment where you have all of the friends coming to help the hero, and he clearly needs help, but he's too, proud to ask. And then he ends up helping them. And then I also
he doesn't want them to get hurt,
Yeah. Oh, and
he's also the leader, and
and he keeps.
I hope this is all making you warm to him, Tim.
Yeah. Well, it helps. It helps. I guess the other thing I do like about his current kind of state of mind is that now that he knows who he is and what Garland is up to, he feels bad that I think he said a couple times where he's described himself as the enemy of his friends, and he doesn't want them to help him because he feels like he has betrayed them in a subconscious way or something. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so
that he's built from the ground up to betray them.
Yeah, exactly. That he's betrayed them without being in control of himself, and so
an original sin or something.
Right. He doesn't want them to follow him and kind of come down that dark path of them because he just wants to, he wants to distance himself from all that. But it makes it even stronger because they're even more determined to help him because he's pushing them away. So there's some cool moments there. And then my last note really was specifically on the music that's playing during that gauntlet, that fight down that corridor. And when that first horse kind of boss comes up, which is an awesome monster design with that flying horse thing,
right.
Black Horse. But the music there, for whatever reason, I think is just amazing. And I'll have to find the track or whatever it's called. But it's right during that boss sequence. It's not the typical boss music that's
right.
playing. It actually might be an alternate version of that boss music, but it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to look. Yeah, I've been stitching stuff in, so I'll definitely take a look for that.
There's been multiple. I noticed it when you fight that dark, that Black Horse boss
right.
that's flying. I'll try to find it. There's definitely multiple times as I've been playing the game though over the course of it where I've said to myself, I wouldn't mind owning the soundtrack because it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yep. All right, let's take another break, and then we've got a few pieces of reader mail I wanted to get through, and then we'll talk about next time.
Sounds good.
We're back again from the break. I really appreciate and wanted to mention we've been getting quite a few emails, more than I think we can read everything that we got all at once. But I did clip out some bits, and I have one more I want to dig into that we have. That's kind of a question for us, so we'll probably go to that one last. But first off, I wanted to mention the Soul Cage. Remember him from the last time, the tree bit. You fight at the bottom of the Ifa tree.
Yeah.
So someone mentioned this trick to me, which I feel like I knew 15 years ago, but didn't remember. I had several people mention you can actually, on undead creatures, you can cast life magic on them and kill them. So if she just casts a life spell or you use a Phoenix down on the Soul Cage, it kills him in one hit.
Unbelievable. That's really cool.
That's a systemic sort of thing, that those things are opposed. We had email from John Hassan and Daniel Johannson, and an anonymous user on asked me a question through Ask FM, which was basically, hey, Brett, did you know this? So that was awesome. Thank you for those. I had forgotten that, and I actually used that trick again at another point, I think, when I was fighting like an undead dragon or something like that.
Interesting. I'm impressed that they go to the hilt on that kind of rule set, because that's pretty. It's not game breaking, but it's a really easy way to divert a specifically difficult boss.
Something that should be a threat. Yeah, for sure.
And usually, we would balance through that and break the rule because we didn't want people to finish the boss that quickly if they figure that out. But the fact that they allow you to do that,
they
great.
Definitely do that, because there's another boss later. It's clearly undead that you can't hit with the Phoenix down or the spell. It just won't hit him. So they definitely do that. I think later games are a little clearer, like you can scan and get good details about what they're weak. Certainly 13 has this in spades. You can see like all the weaknesses they have and what status effects will actually affect them, which is really nice and streamlined, although it takes you have to do a thing to do it. There's inventory items and things like that. And there's a spell basically. So you have to manage some resources to do it, but it's really nice. It's like, okay, I will spend an entry point into the battle to do that. And then now I know everything, and whenever I see this creature again, I'll know everything. I can pause the game and look at the screen and see everything about it, like what it drops and like all this stuff. So it basically tries to build in some of the stuff you'd find on the internet straight into the game. That was good. You may also remember last time I asked a question about dissent in Japanese culture.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I had another, sadly anonymous, but Ask FM contact who said it's pretty similar to Western culture myths, that there's a land called Yomi, which is roughly the equivalent of Christian hell or pagan Hades, thought to be continuous with the world of the living. And there's a story that's similar to Orpheus and Eurydice, featuring characters named Izanami and Izanagi. So it is basically similar to how we might use descending, as a theme in Western games or in Western thinking. So it was nice to have some confirmation of that it basically means the same sorts of things. Yeah. So that one translates straight across. I thought it was interesting to have a kind of parallel myth there. I know how interested you are in that sort of thing.
Yeah. A really quick note that I forgot to mention, there's, Enslaved, the video game Enslaved was based on that Chinese myth.
Right. The monkey.
Yeah. The monkey myth of traveling the Monkey King traveling. And, when we got to Terra, I made a note that I don't actually know if there's a Japanese equivalent to that myth, but I made a note that, having Zidane being a monkey boy / chosen one traveling to this other world, maybe there was something there from a myth perspective.
That's very reasonable. There's also, I think, the other implication I see there is that in a way Garland's people maybe see them as inferior beings, like literally apes, as literally lower forms of life, so that they don't feel bad about just basically giving them no soul or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm not, who knows? That's me reading an awful lot into the game. That's not there, but I tend to do that. All right, and then I think I have 2 or 3 emails. One of which is a question. We'll do that one last. First from Benjamin Lauser via Gmail. He said, "Thanks for the insightful work." This was kind of a touching story. I've clipped little bits out of the emails. He says, "Thanks for the insightful work you've done with Final Fantasy IX. This game holds a very special place in my heart, and I'm glad to hear your perspectives on it. You can thank that Kotaku article for another listener. If you'll indulge me, I'd like to tell you why the game is so important to me. I played Final Fantasy IX over a single weekend in the fall of 2000. It was my first semester at college, and I was visiting my best friend at another university. He and his roommate were on their PCs playing Diablo 2 co-op, while I was on their PS1 working my way through the latest Final Fantasy. We had a blast, staying up way too late, cracking awful jokes, eating deliciously unhealthy food. One of the few breaks in our gaming marathon was to attend a party at which I met the woman who I would marry. Oh. It was magical." So I thought that was kind of nice.
Wow. Yeah, sheesh. Some personal resonance there, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Congratulations on that, then.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Barrington Case from Montreal, he had some kind words, and he also mentioned that he pronounced what I've been calling quina or quina as quinoa, like the the grain.
Yeah, quinoa.
Because he has a cooking background, so what you bring to games is done that. And then he also had a correction for me, which is that in Final Fantasy Tactics on the original PlayStation, the job class was calculator, and their ability was math skills. I was talking about them having.
Oh yeah. That's hilarious.
Arithromancy or whatever. Yeah. And then in Final Fantasy Tactics War of the Lions, which I think was a DS title, they were known as arithmeticians, and the ability name was changed to arithmetics. So a couple of things there. And then let me find this one. I had one with a question in it. I think it's this one. Yes, okay. So... when I think of my fond experience with a game like Final Fantasy IX, this is from Zach Kuschel. Apologies if I'm getting that mispronounced. I'm terrible with that. When I think of my fond experiences with a game like Final Fantasy IX, I already have a preset idea and an inherent love towards everything about the game because I both grew up with it and didn't really have a fully formed opinion when I played it. Being a youth, we overlook how little we truly form our own opinions, focusing rather on being incredibly influenced by others we hold higher than ourselves. I find so often these days that reading a review, either good or bad, influences me, and I'm less able to just enjoy something. We're told what to enjoy through another's opinion, and we can become blind to designs that could be amazing, in our opinion, but we're too busy waiting for that twist that we read happens. Really, the crux becomes expectation. If it's rated well, we expect more than we would otherwise. If we hear that someone enjoyed some aspect, we expect to enjoy it. If it blew someone's mind, we expect the same. Expectation kills our own personal enjoyment of games before we play them. So he felt like he could go along, in that vein for a while. But he was kind of putting that question to us, as far as reviews go. What is your approach to that, to reviews and things like that?
Yeah, it's a good question and a good topic. I am completely, well, I wouldn't say it's 100%, but my personal approach is almost completely blackout. Like I don't read, and I've often thought about this. Same with films for the most part as well, because then I kind of always wonder how I get into my head that I should play something, because I don't. It's usually, I guess, word of mouth, or it's, maybe some friend or something that's played it, or a video maybe I saw. But yeah, reviews I pretty much stay away from, especially for something that I'm looking forward to playing. And it's hard, like a recent example being like Metal Gear 5 or Metal Gear V, depending on how big of a fan you are. That was one that was hard to stay blackout on, because just everyone was talking about it so much. And right. I do listen to podcasts, so I do get some of that expectation, sort of stuff that he's talking about there ruined for me. But I try reviews wise, I stay away.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty much the same now. I mean, I would say a different way to maybe approach this, and this is how I approach film, is to find reviewers that you trust. Not develop a relationship with outlets, because outlets come and go, and right. Who knows who on a staff is writing something. But find somebody whose reviews actually connect with you. Maybe after you've played some games, go out and look for reviews that put it at about the same place you would, and then keep track of those names. And develop kind of relationship with a critic rather than with an outlet, like I said. So for me, with movies, I listen to Filmspotting. I'm more of an Adam Kempenaar guy, as far as that goes. For games, I actually don't. I kind of pick up on a lot of what's coming out just through, Twitter and social media, but I very rarely read reviews. I almost never read criticism that has a number on it anyway. I'm more interested in, this made me think in this way, or there was, when it comes to film or something, it really, this had great, interesting camera shots or whatever. And I don't find that takes me out, or that I have some expectation. I've gotten a little bit better, I think, at sort of distancing myself, but I never look at marketing materials. Like I'm the sort of guy who just, turns his head away during the previews and things like that for movies. And with games, I really, I'm more interested in playing, stuff that I kind of pick up from the background radiation. I'm kind of similar to you in that way, Tim.
Yeah, I really relish. To his point, I really relish the notion that I'm going to play something and experience it as fresh as possible. I think that's a really important part of, as we've talked about in this particular series more than any of the others, I have a theater background, and theater is very much about experiencing the medium on the fly, and come what may. And yeah, there's reviews and stuff there, but you really can't watch a trailer for a play. There's not really, it's not easily marketable. And I don't know if that's really where my influence in this regard comes from. I just really like enjoying the thing, especially games, the way that I was intended to at that moment. Because sometimes it's very timing based and where you are in your life. One case in point that I won't rat hole on. Reed Knight, who's a friend of Brett, of ours, that we still play games together often, and he's a big Fantasies fan as well. But we are both notoriously big fans of Trespasser, which is an old game. Maybe we'll talk more about someday, but kind of a panned game, like really weird game for its time. It was a Jurassic Park game. But I just have great fond memories of it. And we both played it at the same time, and we compared notes as we played it, and just really interesting game that was way ahead of its time. And I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much as I had if I had listened to the outside world.
Yeah, I totally agree. For me, Deadly Premonition might be a game like that, which was a game that didn't review really well because it's a little janky, to be honest. It's not as polished as a lot of titles, but it tries to do something so different from what most games do, and it basically sets you in this world, and it's set over the course of a few days, and that it's a world where people are going to be at a particular place at a particular time, rather than they're always available to you, or and you're going to end up driving like 15 miles on the road, and it's going to take you 15 minutes to do, and it's insane. Like some of the stuff that game does, you're just like, no game does this, but I have a very fond spot in my heart because no game does that, and to a lesser degree, playing Final Fantasy 13 right now, I can remember that being maligned by reviews and not picking it up as a result. And now that I've been playing it, I'm like, this is not, it's not as great as Final Fantasy 9, but this, it's still a fine Final Fantasy game. It's very linear. Have you not played the other Final Fantasy games? Like, it's not, of course it's not Skyrim, right? It's just a different kind of game. And there's stuff about it that I really like. There's a very kind of Monster Hunter-like, hunting aspect late in the game, once you can go on that sort of open world area. So, yeah, for me, it's develop those relationships and, kind of ignore everything else, because you never know how you're going to connect at any particular point.
And it's hard in our business and with our jobs to be blackout like that, because you need to stay current as well to do your job well. So it is a conundrum I hit a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all the email I had time for this week. But yeah, we appreciate it. Keep sending it in. You can send that to devgameclub@gmail.com. You can find me at Twitter at Brett_Duville and him at
Tim Longo Jr.
And I think I already said at devgameclub, but I'll say it again. And I guess that's about all for this time. We're going to finish the game and talk about our takeaways next time. I already know what one of yours is going to be, but yeah, thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.